You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the Morphology Podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week, we'll get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? Well, today we're going to talk to Beth McBride, who won DFL at Mid-South. Now, what the heck is DFL? Well, I'll keep it PG, but DFL stands for Dead Freaking Last. And at Mid-South, there's a celebration for the last rider to finish the 100-mile gravel course. A high-energy celebration that I've never experienced before. Hundreds of people line up at the finish line, and this year, as Beth McBride crossed that finish line as DFL, people were cheering, the champagne was spraying, and the band was playing. It was epic. Bobby Wintle is the race director of Mid-South, and he goes out of his way to make this weekend one heck of a party. Beth tells us about her experience at Mid-South, which was her first 100-mile gravel finish. She also tells us about a challenge she joined back in January 1st to ride 10 miles a day. With over 100 days of consecutive riding, she's still going strong on this challenge and has no plans to end her streak. I was lucky to get to meet and ride bikes with Beth recently when we both were part of the Driftless Gravel Camp in Winona, Minnesota. We both share a deep love for the bicycle and just having the opportunity to ride. It was such a fun weekend. Anyway, here is my interview with Beth. A very warm welcome to Beth McBride. How are you, Beth?
I'm doing great tonight. How are you?
Good. I have been looking forward to this recording because I didn't get to actually meet you, but I saw the action that took place around you. Gosh, has it been a month now? Maybe 3 weeks?
I feel like it's been almost a month. I think it's been a month.
Wow.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And that was down in Oklahoma at an event called Mid-South. So thank you for coming on the podcast to kind of share your story about that event and also just about you and biking.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to kind of talk about my ventures here and share that.
Well, why don't we kick it off with if you could tell listeners where you live and maybe just like what biking is like there.
Yeah, so I live in a small town called Lake Mills, Wisconsin. We have about 6,000 residents who live here. We're just down the road actually from Trek, the Trek headquarters in Waterloo, about 8 miles away from Trek.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so fairly close. We do have a lot of folks who work for Trek and live in Lake Mills. And I'm also close to Madison, about 45 minutes west of Madison, Wisconsin.
Does everyone in Lake Mills get a free Trek bike since you live so close?
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? I have to tell you though, living here as long as I have, I've been here about 15 years now. So I wasn't really involved in cycling 15 years ago, but I saw a lot of Trek bikes.
Yeah.
And, when you're in a community where it's Trek, that's the only kind of bike brand So I can tell you, being involved in like all the gravel and the biking and seeing all these different brands, I'm like, oh, there's more than Trek.
There's more than just Trek. And you said you're in a small town of 6,000. Are you primarily on road when you bike, or are you gravel, or a little bit of everything?
So it's a bit of both. For me, I don't like being on the road anymore. I definitely prefer gravel. We don't have a lot of gravel options. We live fairly close, just about a mile away from the Glacial Drummond State Trail, which is, limestone, dirt, pack.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my gravel route of choice. I do that a lot in the summer when I'm outside. So you'll definitely see a mixture of folks here, some gravelly, a lot of road cyclists. So it's a mixture.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't really have, dirt roads around here, unfortunately.
Sure, sure. And you said, like 15 years ago when you first moved, you weren't into cycling. So what happened in your adult life that gave you the bug?
Yeah. When I So I was a competitive power lifter for a while,
Oh,
and
wow.
strongman competitor. And my husband was the one who actually was a cyclist, road cyclist. He did ultra endurance events, hundreds of miles, 400 miles. And after we had our daughter, I had fallen kind of out of doing powerlifting. He's like, well, let's start cycling together. So he's the one who kind of brought me into the fold
Mm-hmm.
of, road cycling. I can't say that I really ever enjoyed it though.
Mm.
Just something to do to spend time with him out on the road. But I never felt this deep sense of love for it or connection. And it wasn't until I think it's been 2 years now, almost 2 years, where another one of my friends was like, "Oh, you're doing all this road cycling. You should try a gravel event and, sign up for Gravel Worlds in Lincoln, Nebraska."
Mm.
So I was like, all right, let's do that. Right. And I had never been on any kind of gravel before.
What?
Yeah, I took my road bike and they're like, put some 38s on it, some Gravel Kings. I'm like, all right, I'll do that. So my first true gravel experience was at Gravel Worlds in Lincoln, Nebraska, 77 miles. And I have to admit, now that's not my hardest race, but that was probably the hardest thing I had done ever. Right. I had no experience in gravel.
Wow.
I had no experience like descending, ascending, dealing with like this chunks of gravel and sand. So that was an experience for sure.
Wow. Well, and obviously a positive experience because you went on, maybe you have other events under your belt now, but you went on to do Mid-South gravel.
I did. Yeah. I've done a bunch of events, but Mid-South for me was kind of like the pinnacle, because I've been trying to get, a 100-mile gravel century. And part of the problem is I'm slow, right? I'm back of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And so many events have cutoff times, they have to, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
they might not have enough resources, to be out there all day, or they may have to deal with, the city or the town saying, no, you have to be done, right, by a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew going into it that I was going to do everything I could to get across that finish line so I could make it my first, gravel century.
So like when I think of a gravel event, because like I did Gravel Worlds and I also did one in near Kansas City. I think the town was Smithville. It was called
Okay.
Humphreys Gravel. And when you look at, I think they call themselves a race. So you have the competitors in the front who,
Right.
probably have like 10,000 followers on social media and they go really
Mm-hmm.
fast and I don't even understand how they can bike so close to their fellow competitors. Then you have kind of the middle of the pack where maybe those people are trying to go as fast as they can, but they're not going to be on the podium. And then you have like what you mentioned, which I think, because that's usually where I am, is more of a back of the pack. Like I'm still trying to do my best. I'm not, back there drinking beer and doing fireball shots, but I'm definitely, taking my time, finding the comfortable place on the gravel roads. And so is that kind of a good indication? Like, is that also where you fit in, or where do you fit in the grand scheme of gravel riders?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm out there doing gravel rides, I know I'm not competitive, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
don't even pretend to think I am. I'm slow and I'm okay with it. I do train, right? And I do actively try to do like the best I possibly can and try to
Yeah.
get better. But I'm totally at this point fine kind of being at the back of the pack. And I'm not out there, like you said, I'm not out there just drinking beers and hanging out. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trying to do my best
Yeah.
that I can, and just to enjoy the experience as well. That's a big part of it for me too, right? Just enjoy what I'm doing,
Yeah.
um, for sure.
Let's get into Mid-South specifically. At the beginning of this podcast, I kind of described what Mid-South is, a gravel event down in Oklahoma. It's got its own culture for sure. I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah,
the ride director is quite a character. I'm sure that you got your Bobby hug at the end of your event.
I got lots of Bobby hugs and hugs from like people I don't know who they were. So many people at the end.
So tell us about your Mid-South just how the day went, and then the important part is the finish line.
Yeah, so I felt really good, quite honestly, the entire day. I don't know, 100 miles, it didn't feel like 100 miles right in the moment
Mm-hmm.
because I was just enjoying like the beauty. It's so beautiful. It's different, like scenery, and the land is different than what I'm used to from Wisconsin, right? The red dirts, and just I was really like engrossed in riding and
Mm-hmm.
just experiencing it. And I mean, I know a lot of people, right, in the gravel community. So many friends were out there, so that's a big part of it for me, that really helped just keep me in good spirits. I felt fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
most of the day. I had no aches, no pains. I just was enjoying the ride for sure. So I think it was a really good ride.
You were properly trained for this event.
I
Sounds
think
like.
so.
Yeah.
Although I was a little slower probably that in my mind. Like I said, I know I'm back of the pack, but I didn't quite realize like how long I had been out there.
Ah, yeah.
Um, yeah, when I came across the finish line, I'm like, oh, it's 12:30 in the morning. Oh my goodness. But
And what time did you start?
I think I started at 8. I was out there for a total of 16 and a half hours. So I feel like it was probably 8 o'clock. Does that seem right when I do the math?
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like 16 hours of doing anything, right? I mean, we're talking
Hmm.
about biking, but you have to speak to your mental, like either your mental game or your mental strengths or your low points, because there's no way the whole day you're just like, this is, here I go, one more mile and another mile, and 16 hours later. A quick interruption to tell you this week's episode is sponsored by the Buffalo Lodge Bicycle Resort. Located in Colorado Springs, Colorado, this is the outdoor enthusiast ideal place to stay for fun and relaxation. The lodge is nestled at the base of Pikes Peak and just a half mile from Garden of the Gods Park. Learn more at bicycleresort.com. Now back to the show.
Yeah. So I felt mentally pretty strong, most of the ride
Mm-hmm.
up until the point where it went dark, because I'm a city girl. I grew up in the city, and I just, growing up, we never did, outdoorsy activities, right? It's dark, you're in your house. So that's something I've really had to kind of overcome.
Well, and
is
plus you're in a place that you aren't used to.
Right. So that was for me, probably was the lowest, when it got dark. I'm out in the middle of the country, right? And, it's hearing the sounds around you. It's
Hmm.
pitch black, except for your little, headlights. And the other piece of it too was, not really being able to see, right, what's in front of you.
Yeah.
There was a lot of ruts and interesting, things you had to avoid out in those roads. So that was the part that was hard for me. It's just dealing with the darkness and what that felt like.
Sure. And I can't recall a month ago it turned dark like maybe at 7 o'clock ish.
Yeah, I think it was maybe like 8 o'clock ish.
Okay.
Because I remember calling my husband, and I think it was around 8 o'clock, just to let him know, I'm fine, I'm feeling great. I'm like, I'm gonna be done in a couple hours. I don't know what I was thinking. And I remember it was like sunset, and the kind of like the later part of sunset,
Yeah.
around 8 o'clock.
So, okay, so you have, you're on a gravel event, so you have uneven terrain. You are using a headlight to kind of see your way through, and then I'm assuming you have some sort of computer that has a map to kind of keep you on the right track. But were you like, I think I would be afraid of A, my lights going dead, and then B, like creatures in the night.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I felt. So the other piece too is, the last like 20 miles maybe, there was another woman. We kept kind of leapfrogging.
Hmm.
And once it got dark out, we kind of combined forces,
Mm-hmm.
right? Prior to that, I was worried about losing my headlamp altogether, my headlight. So I turned it to the lowest possible
Oh,
setting.
wow.
And
Okay.
then, on my head unit, I was like, I am worried I'm going to, lose battery there as well. So I didn't have the backlight on, so I couldn't see anything. I
Mm.
only knew, being prompted by the head unit, like turn left or turn right. So it was pretty dark for
Yeah.
sure. But when I started riding with that other woman, Elma, we had both headlights in at that point,
Mm-hmm.
right? To kind of help. It was still pretty slow going. In my mind too, I'm like, I wonder if I could stop at one of these like, homes or ranches and like buy a flashlight from them and
Oh,
like
wow.
tape it to my bike. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, how do I get out of this if I truly can't see? And then, of course, the creatures too. There were a lot of surprise dogs, and even at night, they were out there.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So,
Well, and we haven't actually said this yet, but you ended up coming across the finish line as the very last athlete. And Mid South makes a huge deal about that. So, do you want to explain like what that was like crossing the finish line? I'm assuming there was a point when you knew you were going to be the last athlete. Is that true?
yeah, so there was two of us, Elma and I, riding in, and we knew, I'd say right before the single track section of the course, which was around mile 90,
Mm-hmm.
that we were last. There were two other people behind us, and they like zoomed past us at one point. And then the Jeeps were behind us, so we knew like if the Jeep's behind you, you're probably like one of the last folks out there,
Ah.
right? Um,
And
so
they're
once
like the support vehicle, right?
they are,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The Red Dirt Jeep Club, pretty
Mm-hmm.
awesome people. I heard that they really look forward, to Mid South and being there for riders. That we knew, that we were kind of back of the pack. And I have to say, like, once we got into Stillwater, into the city, we rode past, like, all of the Jeeps had, like, lined up like in a parking lot. And as we rode past, they were flashing their lights and, honking their horn.
Oh, wow.
And the Jeeps behind us were like throwing firecrackers out the window. And then we got a police escort, as we came into Stillwater, and you make this left turn, you go up this little hill. And as we, crested that little tiny hill, it was like a sea of people at the finish line, and like folks running on the side of the road next to us, and music, just people like cheering. And as we rolled in, it was like a sea of champagne and everybody screaming, and it was really emotional. I actually started getting emotional when we came into Stillwater, because I was like, I'm finally getting my 100-mile, gravel century. So for me, it was just really special knowing, all right, I just did this. Like, it's happening. Yeah, so it was a wild celebration at the end. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
And lots of different people, right? There was community members, there was other, friends, there other cyclists, there were pro cyclists there. It was a wide mix of all kinds of people who were at that finish line.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I think anybody who does racing or bike events, especially the events that celebrate the last athlete that comes
Mhm.
in, it's called DFL, and I'll just say
Yeah.
dead freaking last instead of
Perfect.
probably what you would want to say.
Yeah.
But tell everyone about the award that you won.
Yeah, so for being DFL, you get essentially, it's a great big longhorn skull. So think skull with the ginormous horns on the end. That was the trophy. I did get a plaque as well, but everybody's fixated on that skull with the horns. It was ginormous.
And I was on a conference call with you a couple weeks ago, and you told everybody something special about that, the smell. So what was that like?
Yeah, the smell. I didn't realize how smelly it was, right? Until I got up in the morning and put that thing in my car and drove 15 hours home. Super smelly. I ended up trying to put it in a garbage bag, and I found like dryer sheets and stuffed those in. But yes, it was very smelly.
Oh, wow. But I mean, come on. You probably wouldn't trade that moment for anything.
No, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Super
So
amazing.
like just seeing some of the photographs, like we've had Marley Blonsky on this podcast, and
Yeah.
she does so much for the cycling community and her cause, which is all bodies on bikes. And I don't know if she was the first one to give you a hug. You had so many people around you, but that moment was a really cool photograph.
Yeah, and I'm glad that she was there. And my connection too to all bodies and bikes, going back to that first time I rode gravel, at Gravel World, I met Marley there
Mm.
and kind of started following, all the work that she has done and the activism, to get all bodies on bikes.
Mm-hmm.
And then after following her, then I got picked to be on the All Bodies and Bikes SPT gravel program.
Oh.
So last August, me and I think there was maybe 12 of us riders. We rode SBT gravel as part of the All Bodies and Bikes team. So I've known Marley now kind of through like the beginning of my journey all the way through. So that's why absolutely, super special that she was, there. And yeah, I'm pretty sure she might have hugged me first out of everybody. So
I'm sure that well, the whole day was probably a whirlwind, just having to be on the bike for 60, or not, I should rephrase that, forgetting to be on the bike for
yeah.
16 hours.
Uh-huh.
But then to have that whirlwind of a
Yeah.
party, and that party was going hours before you got there. So I'm sure everyone was really, really stoked to see you come in.
Yeah, I heard that there was a pretty big party before I got there, and I was like, well, next year I am not going to be DFL, and I want to be there to experience that party too, like everybody else got to.
Yeah. So do you have to give your skull back, or do you get to keep that
No,
forever?
I get to keep it.
Oh,
That's mine.
wow. That is
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, we are working on processing it a little bit more so we can
Yeah.
actually hang it up in our house. It's a bit of a tedious process, but we definitely want to be able to hang it up on
Yeah.
top of the fireplace. I
Or
think it's hilarious.
if anything, if you guys have like a 1970s Cadillac, you could put it on the front end, drive around
That would be
town.
awesome. Yeah, my friends, my teammates were like, strap it to the top of your car as you're driving home.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a good segue. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk about gravel community and like, talking about the DFL party. That says a
Mhm.
lot about the gravel community in itself. But what does gravel community mean to you?
Yeah, through this community of gravel, I've just found, you know, first of all, people I probably would never have met, right, had it not been for, these races and these events, number one. So I feel like now I have friends, right, across the country,
Yeah.
number one, and friends that share like some really, incredible love for being on the bike,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just really shared kind of, connections. That's a big part of me. And most of the folks that I know are really open and accepting, right? You like to ride your bike, great. We love that too. It doesn't come with these preconceived notions of, oh, you're a fat cyclist, we won't accept you.
Mm-hmm.
It goes far beyond that. So for me, it's just, same community. It's just the friends you have and these shared experiences. I mean, how awesome we get to ride our bikes together, right? In,
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have never felt I've never felt judged. How's that, right? And when I was riding road, right, and doing some of those road events, it just the uneasiness I felt and just kind of the judgment I felt, that was
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason why I just never loved road cycling. I just have not felt that at all in the gravel community.
Yeah, and especially when you look at the variety of athletes, like I
Yeah.
mentioned a while back, I mean, you've got, you know, hardcore,
Hmm.
athletes who probably train, more hours than we work,
Right.
because they want to be on the podium. Like, I don't
Right.
have that in me. Like, that's just not something I'm interested in. But yet I'm still out there on the same course. So, and you are
Hmm.
too. So that says a lot about how it feels to be out there.
Yeah, and I absolutely just love having the ability to ride my bike, right? I don't take that for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And I know certainly there's days when I'm training, I'm like, I kind of hate this, but then I have to just reframe it. I'm like, I get to do this,
Yeah.
and that makes me happy. So,
Okay, this is a good segue to my next topic. And actually, it doesn't matter if you're still doing it or if you have completed it, but because either way, it's amazing. But you are deep into, I'm going to just call it a 10-mile a day challenge. I don't know if there's an actual title for it, but do you want to tell us about it?
yeah, absolutely. So, way back in December, a person I follow on Instagram, Kevin Frias, he was like, hey, I'm going to do this challenge where, you pay in X amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is, whoever lasts the longest of riding at least 10 miles a day for the most consecutive days wins the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And half of the pot would go to the charity that he chose. And then if you won, your half you could donate to the charity that you chose. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. I really needed kind of a little bit of a motivation to get on the bike. I had COVID,
Mm.
like November timeframe, and it just kind of, I lost interest in biking, because I
Sure.
had been so sick and I just was overwhelmed. So I'm like, all right, let's do this challenge. And I think 30 people initially joined the challenge.
And it
And then
started
slowly
in January?
January
Oh,
1st, yep,
wow.
start of the year. And people slowly started to kind of drop out, sickness or, travel. And then it got down to two of us.
Mm.
And so we are still going strong. We are still biking at least 10 miles a day. Last week, Tuesday, was the 100th day of biking
Whoa.
continuously. So I rode 100K. I rode 63 miles to celebrate that, the 100th day of cycling consecutively. So, yeah, so we're still going strong. Our joke is this person and I that we're going to ride this challenge all the way to Mid South 2025.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
the day after Mid South, then we'll ride 9 miles together and call it quits at that point. So we'll see what happens, right? Um,
Wow. Well,
but yeah,
congratulations. Like,
thanks.
that's an amazing, I mean, 10 miles in itself is not everybody can ride their bikes 10 miles,
Yeah.
but the time commitment,
Uh-huh.
that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. And definitely, we've been out of town. Our daughter plays hockey, so we've had out of town tournaments. Just life in general. But I've always found a way to get those miles in. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's been great for me for the consistency.
Yeah.
And it's just part of my life now, right? It's like, oh, well, I have to make sure I get my miles in, and just thinking through the day of when I can do it, and whatnot. So yeah.
I found it incredibly inspiring that you were the DFL at Mid South. You were on your bike
Uh-huh.
for 16 hours. You probably got to bed, who knows, 2 o'clock in the morning. And you got up the next morning. Well, it was actually the same morning. You got up a few hours later and did your 10 miles, right?
I did, absolutely.
Oh my
Yep. I
gosh.
spent 3 hours. But I knew I'm like, I have to get my miles in because I knew I was leaving Stillwater that day. And I'm like, by the time I get somewhere, there's no way, right? Depending upon where I, spend the night,
Yeah.
there's no way I'm going to be able to ride. And I actually felt fine, honestly. I tried to just take an easy ride. But yeah, I was like, I have to get my 10 miles in. I just rode around like downtown Stillwater and all around to get my miles in. So
Incredible. I love it. I love that. I like that goal. And I feel a tiny sense of competitive spirit in you, in that if your other guy who's doing 10 miles a day like calls you and says, I don't think I can do it tomorrow, you'll be like, well, I win.
no, I think I would be like, no, you have to get on your bike. We made
Yeah.
a commitment to ending this challenge in 2025.
Oh, wow. Incredible. And you are in Wisconsin, right?
I'm in Wisconsin. Yep.
So do you do any biking outside in the wintertime, or are you like on the trainer?
No, so I do have a fat tire.
Oh,
I do
sure.
bike. Yeah, I bike outside in the winter. I have to admit, I'm, native born Wisconsin. I absolutely hate the winter,
Uh,
but I've been trying, in my advanced age of learning to love or just learning to embrace winter and
sure.
be outside. So I started snowshoeing last year. The fat tire I got 2 years ago. And so I definitely am trying to just, deal with the fact that I live in Wisconsin and it's cold and there's snow. In February, I did the Fat Tire Berkey in Cable,
Oh, wow.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty fun. And we were also supposed to go to an event called Bike Across the Bay and Book Across the Bay in northern Wisconsin,
Mm.
where you actually like bike across frozen Lake Superior. And the other event you snowshoe or run across. But the winter was way too warm, and the
Oh,
lake didn't freeze, so that was out. which I was a little disappointed because it's pretty neat when you see like, in Strava that you've, biked across a lake in the
Right.
winter.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely have been trying to embrace winter and
Yeah.
being outside.
Well, and
So.
I've found, because I have a fat tire bike as well, I'm in Iowa, but
Hmm.
half the battle is just walking out the door, getting
Hmm.
your 17 layers on,
Yeah.
and just once you're out the door, even if you tell yourself, I'll just bike for 10 minutes and then I can go back on the trainer. I mean, once you're out there, aren't you like, all right, I made it this far?
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially winter, it is hard for me to be like, let's go do this,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it's cold and, you don't necessarily want to be out there. But it's that initial, like, just get it done. And then, once I'm on the bike, I'm like, all right, this is great. I'm happy. I'm
Yeah.
out here. I
Yeah.
can do this.
Yeah.
So I agree. Yeah.
And along with that, like here you are over 100 days riding 10 miles a day. I mean, that in itself is just, that's such a huge commitment. But do you have any advice or encouragement you could give to other cyclists who maybe they don't want to do 10 miles a day, but maybe they are having trouble making that step to get the bike outside to ride?
Yeah, I think, and we just said this, right? The hardest part is just getting on the bike, right? So, it may be like it's summer now, right? So lay out everything you need for your bike,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you know that you want to try riding the next day, lay out, your cycling shorts, your water bottle, get
Mm-hmm.
everything ready to go and, put it on your calendar. That way, like, don't make excuses. Or, if you have cycling friends, like, set up a time that the two of you are going to go cycling. The biggest thing is just get on your bike. And
Yeah.
even if that means a mile, that's a mile that, you've done. Um, so just really working on just getting yourself on the bike,
Mm-hmm.
however that happens. I always find once I'm on the bike, I'm usually like happier about it. And then I remember, right? Oh, this is why I love it. This is why I want to be on my bike.
Oh, yeah. And then you get done, you're like, why did I not want to go?
Uh-huh. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I do that too. So what's next for you? I mean, we already know you're going to do 2025 Mid South because,
Yeah.
that's going to be your last day of 10 miles a day. Maybe.
We'll see.
But
um, yeah, so I actually have a bunch of things, probably too many things. But some of these events, right, I look at it just being like able to be with my friends. In 2 weeks, I'm doing an event called the Bear 100, which is in central Wisconsin. I'm doing the 77-mile. It's gravel in the North Woods, and then I'm doing 100 miles at Unbound in June.
yeah.
Grounded Nebraska at the end of June. Um, SBT in August. Gravel Worlds in August. Some other little events in there too. So
And you have obviously upgraded from that road bike that you just put bigger tires on, right?
absolutely. Yeah, I ended up buying a Salsa Cutthroat,
Oh, yeah.
which isn't, yeah, I mean, that's more of a like endurance bike packing type. I have 2.2 tires on it, but it fits me so well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing, right? You want to find a bike that fits and feels comfortable.
Right.
So that definitely helped too at Mid South, right? I never had aches or pains or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, anything like that because the bike, it fits me. So yeah.
Well, if anybody would like to, even, I guess they could go to Mid South Facebook and Instagram to see all kinds of photos of you, especially of that big skull thing. But do you have any socials that you would be interested in sharing with people?
Sure. Instagram is probably the best place to find me. And don't laugh at my Instagram handle, but it's T-Rex, T-R-E-X loves cake. T-Rex loves cake.
Awesome.
So I'll tell you the story because everybody's like, what is that? Back when I was a power lifter, my upper body strength does not even match my lower body strength.
Mm.
And they used to call me T-Rex because I could barely bench anything. So I became T-Rex.
And it stuck.
It does, yes.
Awesome. Well, Beth, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and telling your story, and proud to have met you, even if it's just over the phone. But I got to see you in action at Mid South, and I thought it was pretty darn cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me share my story. I appreciate it.
You bet. And I will, actually, we didn't even mention it, but we will be at a gravel camp in a couple weeks. So we'll get to meet each other in real life.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. Let's hope we can tackle those hills too.
That's right. That's right. All right. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you so much.
Well, listeners, that's it for this week. Email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting. Support my podcast at patreon.com/murphology and visit both my Facebook and Instagram pages for daily entertainment. I have more great episodes in the pipeline, so I hope you continue to be a Murphology podcast listener.